Welcome to the D&D Fitness Radio Podcast, brought to you by your hosts, Don Saladino from New York City and Derek Hansen from Vancouver, Canada. In episode 36, we speak with Keenan Robinson of USA Swimming. How you doing?
What's up, brother?
Hey, Don, I wanted to introduce you to Keenan Robinson. So I met Keenan a couple of years ago in Colorado. And smart guy, and I was watching this documentary on how Formula One racing, how it applies to your everyday car. And so I like having people like Keenan on because, let's talk about elite level athletes, swimmers, whatever. And then how does that apply to, some of the people that we're communicating with on this podcast, like in terms of general population. And so that's why I think, this is going to be kind of a neat conversation.
Well, nice to meet you, Keenan.
Nice to meet you as well.
I'm really excited to, this is going to be an interesting episode. So,
Derek, it's funny, we met at that conference and obviously I've been following you from a social media standpoint for an extensive period of time. Some of our mutual colleagues, they tip each other off, right? Like we were like, all right, I'm looking for something in this domain. Like, who do you follow? You follow this guy, right? And so you started writing extensively on the Globus unit. And last year was when I started mentioning to a couple of our highest level swimmers, like, you guys need to budget and get one of these. And, okay, well, where'd you hear about it? Okay, Derek Hansen, go to his website and read about it, right? And athletes, some will read, some won't. And they're kind of like, okay, well, how did you meet this guy? Right, it just so coincided with, it was a Sunday night game and you guys put up 175 points, right? And I was like, well, I know he's helping a lot with that organization, so what do you guys think? Oh, I'm going to get it. So just instantaneously, right? And then they, they started following you on Instagram or what have you, and they see some of the, speed and movement acquisition that your son has, which is phenomenal, right? He's breaking ankles in the Canadian backyard parks, and they're like, man, I was like, well, look, we're comparing apples to cabbage. We're not even fruits to fruits here. He could probably teach you guys how to do that, but does it have any relevance into beating Japan and Canada and the rest of the world, right? So that's kind of how we've kind of blossomed, Derek.
Well, that's a good sort of lead into some of the questions that Donna and I are going to have. I had worked with collegiate swimmers, and there were all these weird things, if you had a sprinter and you look at them and you see them run, you're like, oh, okay, that person's a sprinter. Or you see somebody who's a linebacker, you're like, oh, yeah. But there's swimmers who I look at them, and maybe even their performance in the weight room was just average or maybe even not that good. And then they get in the pool, you're like, oh, my God, looks like a fish. That guy, I wish I could do that. How do you wrap your brain around that as a performance director, and how do you identify talent, and then how do you know that they're developing the way you want them to?
Well, we can answer that a multitude of ways, and it's probably the same way that you two do it. How do I select talent? I kind of ask for a picture, or I ask mom and dad to come in, right? Because you can't fool genes, right? So if their mom and dad are both 6'4", I'll tell you, I worked with 3 kids when I was down in Baltimore, and their dad was a Major League Baseball player for 18 years. He's part of the Hall of Fame for that organization that he spent most of his career with, and their mom was an Olympic trials finalist in swimming, right? So the big key for me was give them some really, really low level GPP stuff and just let the swim coaches take care of the hard part. So that's how we work with talent identification. And I'll tell you another funny story that hits home with you, Derek, is I met with Swim Canada's high performance director 2 summers ago at the Junior World Championship. So our top 18 and unders, and we had a wonderful, John Atkinson is his name. You guys, Canada brought him over, I think 3 years ago from Great Britain. And we had a wonderful conversation about 2 hours. And then he said, kind of come out here and I want to show you something that what you're doing is fantastic, because it shows you're not all arrogant Americans, but I'm going to show you something that's different than all of us. And I want you to look at your team section. And I was looking at it, and he's like, what's the difference? I was like, I don't know, our face paint. I don't know. I couldn't figure it out. And there was an athlete in the crowd that in previous Olympics was a dominant athlete. And now was just, he said, just a cheerleader. If that happened in Canada, game over, government stops funding. So the other thing I do make no qualms about, we're the United States. We've got tons of great athletes, not walking around, but swimming around. And so just trying to especially in my capacity, because I'm not with one specific team, I'm with all athletes, is like we talked about, like if an athlete or coach comes to me and says, I need X, Y, Z, like that's what I try and help them out and then make sure to differentiate. But to your other question, when it comes to weight room and really weight room activity, I think the luxury we have in our sporting population is we can kind of drop the conditioning of being a strength and conditioning coach, because conditioning is one of the most important things for the ultimate performance. So we're just strength coaches. And so, beating my head against the wall of trying to figure out exercise selection, modality, programming, whatever have you, to replicate swimming is I've come to the realization that what we do is so far away from the SPP aspect of our sport that I no longer trouble myself thinking about a particular lower body exercise, for instance, and how it will translate specifically to the water, more so about load management, whether it's a CNS implication, it's metabolic implication, and maybe some of our, what some have looked and said, oh, that looks kind of rehabby-ish. Well, yeah, like if you have a PARS defect, like that is a performance limiter. So there's some things we have to do to make sure that PARS defects doesn't become exacerbated at the wrong time. So yeah, it may look rehabby-ish, but they're all the same to me, right? It's load, take load off, swim real fast. So I don't know if that answers your question specifically, but that's kind of how I approach it.
Let me ask you a quick question. So when I started with my club, it was predominantly golf and golf fitness. You'd be like, well, where the hell did that come from? Because I trained celebrities. But yeah, it started with, Greg Rose is one of my mentors, and I went to my brother's a very well now amateur. You would laugh, but more of like a well-known amateur player in the area. He was being considered for the Walker Cup. He's played in probably like a dozen U.S. amateurs and mid amateurs. And I remember when we started with this golf fitness, I always laugh when I say the terminology, and Charlie Weingroff coined the phrase golfish. Like the exercise is very golfish looking. Everything had to be done like 5-iron posture, and everything was done with the McKay golf grip. And, everything was just, it was all just about rotation and on one leg. And like, if you didn't look like you were swinging a club, no one took it seriously. And now it's pretty refreshing, because when you go to the World Golf Fitness Summit, you'll see like my buddy, Rob Yang up on the tireless board, and they show him Olympic lifting and snatching. And people are like, well, that's not golfish looking. Like that looks nothing like golf. And I'm like, no, that is golf. That's unbelievable. Is it a tug of war between you and your athletes, coaches? I mean, I want to get kind of a feel of who you're working with, at what age. Are you working with the technique coaches, who are those, the actual swim coaches? Are they turning you and saying, well, she's, really struggling with range of motion? I'm making up BS right now, because it's typically how we deal with it. It's like, oh, well, this guy's coming out. This guy has early extension in the golf swing. And then suddenly, right when I hear that, I know it's potentially a couple things that I have to clean up with in his fitness pattern. And if it's not, then it's probably something neurological, to where like he's just done it over 10,000 times, and his body can do it in slow motion, which means he can do it at full speed, but we got to get him to do it. Does that make sense? Yeah,
no, that's exactly how it comes. And yeah, we sadly, I mean, maybe it still exists in golf, is that the golfish mentality. I don't know if it still exists, but like there's still the swimmish mentality. And Derek, actually Sean Nugent shared some of your guys' old work from back in the day. Sean's become a pretty close colleague. Is like the typical swimming week was true lift 3 times a week, and then do core and abs another 3 times of the week. So you already have a population that's training, 70,000 meters a week, 40 to 70,000 meters a week. So you got that load. And then you're trying to take some out of the water load and compounding it. And, every back issue is a result of, you tried squatting them or you tried deadlifting them. Like, no, not really. So to answer your question, the greatest benefit I got is when I was asked to move down to Baltimore, I got to work with kids from 12 years old up to the greatest athlete of all time. And so you see the whole generation. So you get to actually do like another sizzle term in our like long-term athletic development. That's it at its essence. And so the programming became more of the more and more years I went on, and more I realized like the ability to have feel in the water, the ability to manipulate your body through the water, you can't replicate that on land. And And the term that so many coaches have used is they're not athletic. So that's why we don't do box jumps. Well, just it's in any sport, right? Like you may try and do a box jump with a golfer, right? Or a track athlete. And yeah, they don't look athletic. Put a stick in their hand, all of a sudden it's athletic, right? So no, you're just a meathead coach. Like you just didn't take the time to understand like human movement and human proficiency. They've been doing that for 18 years, and that's why they can do it in this domain. They just did a box jump for the first time for you. So yeah, it looks like crap. So we really started grooving that. And to your point, you kind of talked about range of motion and sport-specific neurological movement proficiencies. That's why I keep on saying like the biggest benefit we got was as soon as a coach said he looks like crap in the water, or she just cannot, her stroke's not there, you burnt the candle, right? Or you short-circuited the brain. And then the range of motion standpoint is we don't have an off season. So we don't end our swim season in mid-January and do off-season winter training like we do in perhaps football or in July in American basketball. We just swim all the year through. So if in fact, which from a metabolic standpoint, you're never going to have enough, a male is never going to get enough rest and resuscitation to have the hormonal effect to get big and bounded up. That being said, like the short tissue adaptations they get from swimming compounded with lifting may decrease range of motion. But if you're out there on the deck, talking to the coach, watching them practice, you're going to know when to peel back. So if the volume is going up in the water and they're going like this more frequently, like what's the value of doing 7 different vertical upper body movements? Like they've got it down. Like they've got that for years, right? So I don't know if that fully answers your question, but
no, 100%. It's the argument, Derek. I think you've heard me talk about this. It's like in golfers. You see all these golfers trying to throw side med ball pass. It's like a rotational side med ball pass where you have to get your hips leading, and your hips have got to kind of lead the med ball, the arms, just like in the golf swing. Kinematic sequencing, the hips, the torso, the arms, and the club head. You want to kind of emulate that. And I've always looked at it something like, well, how the hell is 3 sets of 5? Like you just swung a golf club. Tiger Woods has swung a golf club how many times in his last 10 years? Was it the weight training that hurt his knee? Was it the running that hurt his knee? Or was it the fact that he has rotated his knee and that his leg has just come like almost like this explosive movement 5 million times? But you have Johnny Miller on criticizing, oh no, Rory McIlroy's getting too big and he's lifting too much weights. And I'm like, no, Rory McIlroy swings a golf club 10 hours a day for the last 20 years of his life. This is not healthy. Like swimming, yeah, it's a healthy sport, but I'm sure, and this is my next question, I'm sure you look at specific, strokes and movements and say, that might not be the best thing for that individual, but that's a sport. That's their job, right?
Yeah,
100%. So you kind of hit the net. Like if you had gotten Rory or you had gotten Eldrick Woods when they were 12, yep, the weightlifting in conjunction with the movement patterns would have worked systematically, and there probably would have been less of an opportunity for that knee to break down, right? But
great, 100%.
The coach that was charged with doing some sort of strength enhancement got them when these deficiencies were already in their body, right? It just didn't manifest, and it wasn't the weight that made this express into pain or dysfunction, right? It was going to happen whether or not they kept on doing, arm curls or picking up the Great Cook bar and attaching it to a plate rack and replicating a golf swing. And again, like, so it comes back when your movement patterns when it comes to swimmers, right? And how do we whether it's an FMS or whether like the title of screening process, whatever your system is, right? Your colleague Charlie always talks about whatever it is, let's see it and be able to say why you're using it. And I wish more people listened to what he said, because it would like quit nonsense debate. But anyways, like what makes them great in the butterfly stroke, Derek, you know this, like if you just watched a video of Michael or even like right now an American butterfly or Chase Kalish, you wouldn't teach that to swim the butterfly, period. And much less, like, you wouldn't have them take like dumbbells and do like dumbbell rotations like that, because like they figured it out They got thrown in an aqueous solution, and to get their body comfortable to move fast, like they figured out that's what I'm going to do. You don't want to, like, that's the gift, right? That's the gift. All much like any other sport, like the running backs that are great at cutting, like the defensive backs. I still think, like, watching Deion Sanders in his prime, his backpedaling was like, you couldn't replicate it, right? So, you know, like, you're not going to hook a sled up to him or do resistance, like, because he just let that fly. So yeah, to your end, like, you see it and you cringe. Like, certainly they're debriding the rotator cuff, or certainly with that extension, if they did it more at the hip as opposed to L4 and L5, it would be healthier. Yes, absolutely. But does it come at too great of a cost that they no longer are on the podium, and so they're dead fish, you know?
Yeah, like I remember I had a lot of discussions with swim coach and also speed skating, which is very, you know, it's not similar, but it kind of is. And they're like, yeah, we got this athlete and I want you to do this lift because it's going to help their start. And I'm like, and it's like a 400-meter swimmer or a 3,000-meter speed skater. I'm like, that's a lot of work to just, you know, fix that start, which may not really have a bearing on anything, right? So, I mean, I get it. And then you probably do this. Well, you know, the squat will help generally to improve their overall strength and, you know, but yeah, trying to fix a start in the marathon is not a good use of time, would you say?
Oh, well, even in the sprint events. So if you ever heard Ralph Mann break down a start in track and field, he has looked at 1 billion starts. He's broken it down from a arthrokinematic, bio, like everything, or Dan Paff when he breaks down and like revert, like, so he watches the film and puts it in reverse after like their first 3 steps and then back into the starting block. Like, track and field starts have been broken down, analyzed. So like, we're, as a sport like swimming, we're still like in 1976 with the track and field, because as soon as they come off the block and they hit the water, it changes the game. Whereas ground force impact, so forward lean, all those different things that come into a fantastic track start that, again, is unique, right? Like, isn't it, Derek, you would know far better than I would, but the way Bolt started and got into his stride length was unique. You talked about it in one of your talk. Like, that's what made Usain better than everybody else. So in swim, like, we don't know what the best start mechanics are. So you're right. Like, we make your legs stronger, potentially if we make you explosive, so your one force output. The closest thing we've come to it, right, is strength velocity curve by the guy out of France that he did on the swim team. And basically he was able to say, like, that's why the American Anthony Irvin won, because our guys dismissed force velocity curves. What's the big guy out of France on force velocity? Anyways, I can't think of it, but yeah, your point's accurate.
Don, you got any questions for Keenan?
Yeah, I do. I was just you read my mind. I want to ask Keenan about more nutrition questions now. How, like, preparation. These, I mean, I always laugh about hearing, you know, when they were with the Olympics and Michael Phelps, and even to this day, all you ever hear, Michael Phelps was eating 10,000 calories a day. And I'm like, well, how much of that was true or how much of it wasn't true? Like nutritionally, how much emphasis do you put in to, you know, to the nutrition supplementation portion for a lot of these swimmers? I just kind of want to get a little feel for how you approach this.
Well, I think a good way to kind of talk about this, more importantly, is obviously, like, we can end like the Michael discussion. There's some validity to it, but there's also, like, everybody's got to make a buck, right? So his agents were brilliant, right? Someone must have observed him in the Olympic Village eating, and they were like, oh, it must be 10,000 calories, and it caught on, right? But that being said, the man and all of his contemporaries, I mean, they have to fuel, because they're in a perpetual state of overreaching, which is not necessarily a negative term. Like, if it's done under like a calculated approach, like Michael's coach Bob Bowman does, like overreaching was good, so that the super compensation curve was like immediate, like a straight line to a gold medal. But the last word you used, Don, was supplementation, and obviously that's that's probably where not only swimming, but all Olympic sports differ than even even like the big four in terms of testing policies and procedures. Because I mean, the random drug testing and again, like, I guess I'll speak more to the United States than I can to Russia, because we're all aware that like they just do whatever the heck they want, and somehow like it gets perpetually turned a blind eye. But so the challenges that we all face, right, is the sensationalizing and the marketing of ergogenic aids or supplementations, right, and young impressionable minds, young impressionable athletic minds, they're going to try whatever can hopefully help them the most. But the low hanging fruit stuff is still dismissed, right? Like the gigabytes and gigabytes or databases of creatine supplementation. Like it's pretty like exact science now with creatine, right? Like we're not 1992 now where they think people are dying because of using it. Like the impact of what they can have on the body, and then finding a company that actually manufactures something like, and I'm just using this as an example, that we know is third-party tested. And so if an individual is taking it, there's no risk at them having a contaminated, so the creatine on this conveyor belt was also the same conveyor belt that was manufacturing some sort of pre-workout, and the contaminations cause a failed test. So that's like where the big challenge is. And so I would say, again, we rely heavily on the USOC, United States Olympic Committee's registered dietitians. They're fantastic in terms of staying ahead of the game, in terms of research, ahead of the game of fueling, timing, frequency, and all those aspects to really bring it back to quote Dan John, right? Are professional athletes just eating like adults, right? So are they asking you like, what pre-workout can I take? But you know, I don't mix in just straight up black coffee, or I get up and I fuel with Lucky Charms, right? Like, or
right.
I don't fuel at all because we start our training at 6 a.m. in the water. Like I don't fuel at all. So I'm just running in an energy depleted state. So starting with no one, to the best of my knowledge, has failed a drug test on kale and spinach. You know, right. So like start with that, that's safety. And then like, look at the unbelievable amounts of performance enhancing benefits you get from just like the vitamin density, the nutrient density into it.
Right.
And, you know, and I guess like, we'll just kind of keep going because Don, I imagine in your population, especially in your geographical location, is okay, like, do I go paleo? Do I go Atkins? Do I go ketogenic? Like,
you know, I mean, we just had this conversation but we were talking about this with Ben House the other day, and he couldn't even, you know, it's a question he doesn't even want to like answer. It's just like, because it's just, you know, you just get tired of it. I mean, get back to the supplementation. I mean, yeah, I mean, I have to be careful because, you know, I am a big believer in nutrition, diet. I believe that, you know, food quality trumps, and before we need to start getting on supplements, there's so many other things that you're not doing well. And, but even from a legality standpoint, I mean, I know I do lean on the informed choice, and I do lean on the NSF certified, and you've heard some nightmare stories even with those labels. But, you know, I just, there's so many taboo, there's so many fads. I mean, I would almost imagine, like, in my world, I don't take this the wrong way, I almost feel like it might be a little easier for you because everyone's kind of coming to you with one specific goal in mind. And with me, it's like, it's a disaster. It's like, you know, people are so just twisted in their perception of what needs to be done, and just a new diet, you know, like this ketogenic diet. Like, the ketogenic diet was not invented this year. Like this is a diet that's been around for, I don't know, centuries. I mean, people don't even realize they were doing it. Fasting, like, but suddenly everyone's talking about intermittent fasting. And then you got to go in and you got to talk to people. I just had a very high profile celebrity, one of the biggest people in Hollywood, contact me, and they were like, do you think I should start doing intermittent fasting? And suddenly I'm like, oh shit, here we go. Like, all right, I got to have this conversation. Well, what are you trying to do? Why? And then rather than me saying like, No, it's terrible. I never say anything's terrible. I want to give people the ability to think for themselves and make that decision. Like, all right, listen, if your diet's been phenomenal and you feel like you got to give your digestive system a little bit of a break and you want to do it once every few weeks and your adrenals are good and your hormones are fine and like, okay, maybe it's a tool we want to use, but for why? If you're just too lazy and you don't want to eat and you're using it because of that and you're going to be eating hamburgers and drinking vodka the night before, no, I don't think so. You know what I'm saying? So it's just, I'm more curious. Are you dealing with those conversations? Sorry about the rant.
No. You're right. In your world, 100%, because there's roads or there's rabbit holes that they'll go down because it's less of a risk, right? So one of your clients goes into even Whole Foods, right? Like we think Whole Foods, like everything in there is going to make you make you look like you and your top clients, right? Like that's not the case. They still sell chocolate chip cookies in Whole Foods, right? Sure. But the energy drink, like there's an energy drink section at Whole Foods, right? So like your clients will walk in and they actually will consider the choice of whatever, Monster or Super Kick 6000, whereas hopefully by this point in time, like our kids are going to like, I got to stick with the Americano or cold brew or something like that. But the diet kicks like still surprisingly like leak into our world. And it just like baffles me, right? Because even like the most out of shape swimmer still is cut, right? Is still rocked out, right? So like, no, you don't have to detox. Like, what are you detoxing from? Like if you led a lifestyle that would require you to detox for whatever that means, like you're not in our sport anymore. Like you're not on our radar. Like you're just a recreational person. So like you said, like the ask is why are you doing this? But some of the more sensationalized, sure, ketogenic, what have you, like it gets in simply because our kids are very impressionable and they're starting to become, they've exhausted their NC2A eligibility and they're still training. So I guess the only word you can use is they're pro, but they're not getting $47 million to be a backup in our organization. Like no one gets paid like that, right? So are you really a pro? It's like a whole different topic. But then they read like, like LeBron did keto, right, for a while. And so they say like LeBron did it and, he was able to be good for 82 games. And I'm like, well, okay, I want you to Google LeBron James and Aubrey News article in the month of May, June, and July in the playoffs. Like they talked about him being worn down. Like nutrition has a part of that. Not saying like his diet, whatever, like I don't know what he did, right? But I just try and inform our athletes like that was still only 8 out of 12 months of training and competition, game level. You have 12 out of 12 months where you got to be high end and keep on going back to the well and be an elite level performer. So those are the conversations I typically have. And again, like whatever, like we all know our specialties. We all know where we're really good. I just oftentimes say like, go talk to Alicia Kendig. She's our registered dietitian. That's her world. She's going to be able to answer this a lot better. So it's good to have like a team, right? Like, unfortunately, Don, like it's you and maybe, some of your contemporaries, but like, you just can't keep up. Like I imagine in that domain of human performance, you've just said, I'm the Titanic. I am down. Like I'm going to try and like get back up, but I can't stay up with what
I argue LeBron. Hold on. I argue LeBron. I think I don't believe it. People don't understand getting into ketosis. Some people say it's easy. It's not that easy. It's really not. It's like you're playing with ratios here. Everyone thinks that they're on keto, but they're consuming way too much protein. Like was LeBron peeing on ketone strips every day? Was he like checking his blood? Like come on, like did he just dive into the principles? How was his diet to begin with? Like did he suddenly like? How do we know he wouldn't have performed just as well eating, a standard, 40-30-30 diet and just cleaned it up? Like people will contact me about macros and I'll say, well, you don't have to. Why do you like when I get ready for a shoot or I have something? Yeah, I'm measuring my macros. But get rid of the alcohol you're drinking once a week. get rid of the which we all say isn't a big deal. Get rid of the monster cheat day you're taking on Sunday. I like, here and there, I'll have cheat meals. when I'm prepping for a shoot, I won't have cheat meals. I'm bringing this up in front of Derek. Derek's going to be sick of hearing this. But when I got ready for my cover of Muscle and Fitness last March, all I really did was just remove my cheat meal that I was having every Sunday, and maybe the little bit of alcohol I'd have maybe once every few weeks. I lost 10 pounds in 2 weeks.
Yeah, you know, it's funny, like, I laugh at how you say, like, we're so dismissive of the impact of alcohol, and maybe because it's like, we get it. Like, every human being gets it. Like, it's a choice. And when you make that choice, like, there's ramifications. But I'll just say, like, you look at Michael in 2016 at our trials or in Rio, and, like, there's that famous picture of him in the green suit. And you're right. He looks like a cover of Muscle and Fitness ad. He just gotten out of the water. Well, like, he legitimately gave up alcohol. And so at the age he was at, to still come home as the most, in the Rio Olympics, won the most medals. Like, yeah, he had a ton of background. That's the most important thing. But, like, he made one lifestyle choice, and his day-to-day preparation for Rio made Rio what it was. And
but that was low-hanging fruit, in my opinion. People want to dismiss it. Someone very close to me recently just started playing hockey 2 to 3 nights a week. That's all he does for exercise. And he gave up booze. He lost 25 pounds. 25 pounds in 3 weeks. A little excessive, a little extreme there, but the facts are in front of you. Yet we all want to know what the best supplement is, or we suddenly want to make this whole crazy diet change to lose weight. Like, yeah, you're going to lose weight on the ketogenic diet, but you'll also lose weight if you just remove all the crap out of your lifestyle and eat a balanced diet. No, you don't have to get on a fast to detox. Just eat good organic foods. You know,
how much alcohol was that guy drinking?
It's unbelievable, a shit ton. But that's what I'm trying to say. We don't really look at it. What we're doing sometimes is it being something wrong. I'm not saying you don't have to drink, but there's a cost to doing that. Yeah, everyone's got to stop drinking. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying there's a cost of doing business. And sometimes we start diving into this extreme, thought process where the answer is right in front of you, man. It's pretty simple. Just stop drinking 6 nights a week and move it to 2, and you're going to see a lot of improvement right there.
One of the things that's really impacted our sporting population, as we still talk about nutrition, is these meal delivery services like Blue Apron or what have you. Is these athletes now, instead of spending $150 at GNC or on bodybuilding.com, not that they don't have good, like, not to knock them, right? But, like, our athletes were like, okay, I was still eating pizza bobs or like whatever you may have, and expecting that the whatever supplement was going to make
the L-glutamine they would take. Yeah, exactly. I get it.
So instead, they switched it and spent $150 on having a meal delivery service. Then they don't even have to think. In our population, they could just throw it in a slow cooker, throw it in what have you, before they go to their 2.5 hour practice, come home, boom, immediate fueling. And it's like, it's funny, like some coaches and people, like, globally looking in are like, wow, who would have thought? And it's like, man, like, it's not that hard. It's just like, everybody knew that, like, a steak and a chicken paired with kale, Brussels sprouts, asparagus, and maybe some form of grain and starch. Like, I mean, you just talk about Nancy Clark's, like, original, nutrition book that came out in 1991. Like, it's still the same, but people are just packaging it differently, right? Like, now, like, when she talked about adding spices to your food, like, she meant turmeric. She didn't realize, like, if she just put turmeric in there, like, her book sales would have been exponentially greater, right?
Yeah, well, because Don and I want to get more supplement sponsors for the podcast, we're going to talk a little bit about the smart use of supplements. And when I watch swimmers, like, they're in the long durations, like, and you're doing multiple sessions, like, how are you managing their energy from a supplementation point of view? And even, like, you can even speak to hydration, because that was the funniest thing. Like, people are swimming in water and then they're, like, drinking lots of water because they're getting dehydrated, which is counterintuitive for some people. How do you guys manage the on deck kind of nutrition and hydration protocols?
So, like, kind of running with our continual theme is like keeping it simple, right? So that they do get up at 5:30, 6:30 a.m. to get to a 7 or 6 o'clock practice, what have you. And you're right. Like, I think it's almost out of American swimming, but there was still, like, as far as I worked with a girl in high school, and then she went to a Power 5 conference institution, and the coach was still saying, like, we'll allow water during practice, but not Vitargo or Gatorade or any of the sports carbohydrates. I was like, is Bear Bryant like alive and coaching swimming? Like, this is 2011. Like, we was talking. Anyway, so like, we know the impact of just dehydration on motor unit recruitment. We know the impact of dehydration on metabolic synthesis, and so its impact on aerobic and anaerobic training. Like, just basic sense. And I think as a sport, like, our coaches realize, like, energy system development is what we're looking for, is what we're doing. And so if you can just break it down into simple terms, like, if they're dehydrated, like, it's going to impact what you're trying to do. So if you wrote this unbelievable training set and they come in and they're underfueled or they're dehydrated, like, it's not going to get the maximum benefit at the cellular level. And like, what's Charlie's line? Like, mitochondria don't mitochondriate. Like, we can't make up cellular physiology. Like, it is what it is, and so if it directly impacts that's low-hanging fruit, literally. Like, pick a piece of fruit up and bring it in. So within practice, I think it's gotten pretty darn good. The message has gotten well out there. I think a lot of the fantastic registered dietitians in our country, like I mentioned, Alyssa Kendig works for the USOC, Dr. Susan Kleiner, and she's worked with multiple sports. And actually one of our ex-swimmers, who now is the nutritionist for the Carolina Panthers, Jen Brunelli, like, they've done a good job of it impacted them as professionals and at a personal level, that they've gotten the message out about proper fueling within a training session. Because what most people lose sight of is, in our sport, like, our training sessions are more grueling than the competition sessions. So they train for an hour and a half, some up to 2 hours, for an event that, may be 4 minutes and 36 seconds. And so, like, it's very different than any other sporting population. And so, and what typically happens is the good portion of it, the quality part of the workout that's supposed to replicate most closely the performance, is at the end of the workout. And so, like, you got to take these things into consideration, where if we just use the model of the NBA, where we bring them in 2 hours before and they have a pregame meal, and then we put them out on the court and they play, and then they come in and we give them a Gatorade bar, which is, basically just a more protein packed Snickers bar, right? Like, we both know that, right? Like, they're going to be fine. In our world, that doesn't happen. And in the compounding factors of post-practice fueling, and again, with so many American NC2A institutions having athlete-specific dining halls, like, again, like, spend extra on your tuition or whatever it may be to get in there. Because if you've been to some of them, the University of Tennessee, University of Louisville are two of the most impressive student-athlete dining halls I've been into, because you walk in and you've got a plate and it's got broke down macros, very basic macros. And so, right, they're all 18, 19, 20, 21-year-old kids. And so they work with a dietitian. They say, like, you need more. This is how many carbohydrates. This is how many proteins you need. And you're like, well, okay, does that mean just bagels? Or what's the gray area between, like, spinach says they're carbohydrates and bagels say they're carbohydrates? Like, how do I mix through that? And they don't need to go to a physiology class. They just need to have it boom in front of them, and they can see it at these institutions. So I think that's where we've really seen, just a small key performance indicator in our population, where as opposed to them, like I'm sure, like, when you would go to age group swim meets, like, parents would be bringing in a dozen bagels from Brugger's or where have you, and, like, they'd fuel off that, or they just say, like, down this gallon of Gatorade or sports carbohydrate drink. Like, there's a little bit more strategy to it. And again, kudos to the registered dietitian field for breaking it down into easily usable, tangible information, so that when these kids get to the collegiate level, it's kind of ingrained in them.
All right. So curious now for your opinion on specific recovery modalities. Again, things that have been around for a long time that have suddenly gotten its a popular craze. And, it could be because Michael Phelps is walking out of the gym one day and he has cupping marks on his back and everyone's like, ooh, like what's that exactly? There's so much training that has to go into what your athletes are doing, and there's so much stress being put on their bodies. What is your protocol for recovery? Are there specific modalities like dry needling, acupuncture, cupping, cryotherapy? Like, what do you guys use? Is it all the above? I want to get your opinions.
Yeah, I think, to simply put, all the above, and it depends, right? And cryo chambers I don't think they're as big now. Would you say? Like, I don't think they're as big as they were like 2 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, I happen to own one at my club, and I purchased it there. I want to say 3 or 4 years ago, right? Where in New York City, we were probably the second facility in the city, maybe third, but we were really literally up there. Now it's they're opening on every corner because everyone thinks they can make a buck off of it. And I actually laugh because it's not my primary business. I offer it in there. So all I do, it's really simple. When a competitor turns around and he goes cheap, I go cheaper. Like I'm basically screw him out of business.
Well, for your population, it's different. It's like no one has ever gotten into the debate of cryotherapy general, cold tubs, ice, cryo chambers. No one has gotten into the debate of whether it's impactful and useful in the general population. Why?
Let's do it.
Like in athletes, right? Like you see, like there was a picture that was put out recently of the majority of the Golden State Warrior guys in a cold tub, right? And people were like, oh, that's why they're on a losing streak. Or like, well, maybe they don't care because they don't have to start playing until January 1. They're going to make the playoffs, right? Like the whole, like, let's still debate and get into a huge argument about the efficacy of cryotherapy. But it's fine in the general population. It's totally beneficial, right? But then you get into the athletic population and it's funny. Obviously the cupping thing became sensationalized because of what Michael, like he was on the global stage, right? And of course, like I didn't get alerted to this, so I got back home. But like there was like Twitter battles and like saying like, oh, he's going to be terrible at the end. He wasn't. And I think Eric Cressy, love Eric Cressy. Like he got in there. He's like, that guy's won like 632 million medals. Like lay off of him. He can do whatever he wants, right? And like exactly. We don't know what goes into the decision-making process of why athletes or athletic teams are making the recovery situations. But I do think what we've done, and Derek, I attribute a lot of it to you, Carl Valet, our other colleague. He's done a great job of bringing out like this modality can either work at the metabolic level. This modality can either work at the neurological level, or it can work at the the psychological level where like, I don't know, like when I was 12 and I broke my first world record, I sat in a cold tub, and after every other world record, I sat in it. So I don't care if some scientist, some geek in a laboratory tells me like it's not beneficial. It seems to be beneficial and not hurting me too much, right? And cupping, right? It has its place, it has its service, but what are you recovering from, and what part of the body, what part of the organism are you trying to resuscitate, right? Like we just spent a good amount of time talking about nutrition, right? So are you getting cupped and with a burrito and washing it down with a Diet Coke? Like you're not recovering. You're probably creating more inflammation into your body. So I do think that the great practitioners that work with swimmers that we have we try and have an integrated model, right? So someone that is a licensed doctor of chiropractic medicine, they're going to approach the human body and human body dysfunction recovery a little bit differently, but with the same school of thought as a physical therapist, as an athletic trainer. But ultimately, like, why wouldn't you bring a physician into the discussion, and not just a physician in general? Like, are you bringing in a general family practitioner with sports medicine fellowship trained? Like, they understand the athlete's body than just, like, no disrespect, than just a general family practitioner. And orthopedic surgeons, like, that's what they do every day. They evaluate radiographic images to see dysfunction. They go through on-body clinical exams, and then they sometimes have to cut the human body open. So they've really seen fibrotic tissue and really have, at least the physicians that we have, Scott Rodeo, who works at the Hospital for Special Surgery there in New York City, like, he's been the chair of our Sports Medicine and Science Conference for 20 years. Like, he's going to have some really good insight into saying, like, it doesn't hurt, but here are some other decision-making processes you guys can have. Like, yeah, there's probably some validity to pineapple juice reducing inflammation, but there's 10 other things that's going to make it a little bit more impactful. So to your point, yeah, it's individual basis, it's practitioner basis. Like, we don't want, like, I'm an ATC and there's muscle energy techniques that I can do. There's some things that may look like a manipulation, but I can't do a high velocity manipulation, not if I don't want to lose my licensure. So I'm just going to punt. Like, if a kid was like, puts value into that, like, the muscle energy technique is the same thing. It just takes a little bit longer. But if they're like, I take greater value in a sacral rotation that's quick and fast, I'm going to send you to my DC. Like, it's okay. Like, at the end of the day, like, we're still trying to beat the rest of the world. So
right.
I don't know if that's
No, it was perfect. I mean, I loved what you said about Cressy. The guy has won a zillion medals. Leave him alone. What starts frustrating me is the research. Because would you agree, or what's your thought process when you start looking at research that comes out? Like, for perfect example, the other day. So coconut oil. Let's just do something simple. Coconut oil. Back in the 80s would have been frowned upon, right? Everyone thought, oh, it's high in saturated fat, it's terrible for you. Then, probably over the last decade, it's been glorified a bit. Would you agree? Everyone's, tablespoons of coconut oil, it does well under high temperatures. Now, just recently, an article comes out saying that coconut oil is awful for you. It's absolutely terrible. So think about this. Think about this. You have we at least know that there was 3 professionals, 3 doctors, 3 nutritionists, people who consider themselves experts, dove into a product and researched the product, whether it was in the 80s, whether it was 2010, and let's call it now. And all 3 of them, well, at least 2 of them, had completely different opinions, but everyone's contradicting themselves. And it's screwing people up. It's confusing.
The research pendulum is swinging.
Right. Like, so, I mean, obviously, like, you have to be an informed practitioner, right? Like, none of us want to be considered, none of the 3 of us are gurus. Like, people may label us, so that's cool. Like, whatever, like, they just don't know us, right? But like, a guru is someone that doesn't, like, understand the difference between, like, the human element and the scientific element, right? They just live in the cool element, the yes men. That's just my own personal opinion of gurus. So when we look at, we have to understand something, like, is there some validity to it? But like, it's been said time and time again, every morning we could get up and type anywhere coconut oil and on PubMed, and just the first 10 hits that show up on your screen, probably 50% will say are advocates of it and 50% will find something wrong with it. I'll go back to something like the cupping thing. So immediately after Rio, right, the National Athletic Trainers, the Michigan Athletic Trainers Society asked me to come speak on cupping. And my second slide was the PubMed peer-reviewed journals of actual, like, good level 5 studies advocating cupping, and it's not there. So the gist of my talk, I told them, like, please understand what you're signing up for. I'm going to tell you the legitimacy of it. Like, there's probably, I said it on the news too when they asked me about it. Like, of the 10 things that impacted Michael, cupping was probably number 37, right? Like there's like you got to understand, like, but he bought into it, and guess what? That was game week in our case. Like, he wanted it, you're getting it. We've tried, like, we've done other things.
I'm so happy you said that too. I really am, because people, it's not their job to either. Like, you're the professional, you're the one who's been doing this, you're the one who understands. But general pop, someone picks up. This is, I'm sure you don't get this as much as I do, but I'll have the typical Wall Street guy every week forward me an article on, like, something he read in, like,
Men's Health.
The New York Times. They're not sending me research on PubMed. Like, look what I just did now. They're sending me, like, what they wrote in the New York Times, and I'm looking down, and I'm like, wait, I know the guy who wrote that, and he's full of shit. It's just like, it's just something funny, but yeah, this is a consistent battle. I just feel like that it's so difficult in our industry. You try and put research out on, let's just say it's 50% of the things that are researched in fitness and nutrition. And there's so many other variables that can affect Michael. Everyone wanted to point at something.
Look at the population that study used, right? Like, so whether it's the ketogenic diet, well, it's been used on Marine Special Force, well, are you a special operator? Hell no, you're not. We're not comparing apples to oranges. We're comparing like apples to like grains, like not even in the same discussion, or even like an exercise selection, right? Like high intensity training. Like people are now like bastardizing that because 3 studies came out on like college recreational studied athletes. Well, they were like frat boy Freddie and like just like, some girl that was like walking by that had been using the treadmill for 3 of her first 4 years of school and was like, oh, I can get $150 to participate in this study. Like, heck yeah, I'll do it. Like people like we work with, like frat boy Freddie's a nice enough guy, but like he's not competing with the world to win us a medal, right? Like, so we'll read it and then we'll use our own intuition to apply it.
That's why it's someone that you're working with. Yes, every little point, it does matter because you've just, it's every millisecond. It's my guy, it's like, honestly, like HIIT training or steady state, like just do how you feel. You don't need to be using Omega Wave. Like you're just like, you're checking your heart rate variability every morning. I can tell you what it's going to say. You're getting 4 hours sleep, but now you're drinking 2 bottles of wine. Why don't we eliminate that stuff before we go in and do $6,000 of blood work? Like,
shake my hand. Shake my hand. Like if you've got a limp wrist today because you were out in downtown New York, like I'll tell you, your HRV is low. Like that's all I need to know. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Don, you got to start sending your Wall Street clients like articles from People magazine on how to invest your money and say, hey, what do you think of this?
You know what? I actually did that once. I actually did because someone came to me and they showed me something in Men's Health and I read it. It was like they were trying to bring back the crunch, or I don't know what the hell it was. It was something absolutely asinine. And I just looked at the guy because he was on the Forbes list, like one of the top, I can't say too much because but one of the top investor guys, whatever. And I said, how would you feel if I came to you and I brought up some TV personality who like have a discussion with me, let's talk about it. Don't tell me this is what we have to do because this person's saying it. It's 2 different things. You want to come in and you want to discuss crunches, you want to discuss the ketogenic, whatever you want to discuss, I'm happy. I'll talk for hours. But don't tell me this is the be-all, end-all, because nothing I've seen in this industry is, for the exception of sleep, hydration, and proper nutrition, is the be-all, end-all. I mean, it's really simple stuff, guys.
And consistent, long-term work, right? Like in the athletic population, like do it for a long time with 0 training intermissions, and like you're probably going to get somewhere close to the results that you want. Right. It's the same thing with your population, right? Like they want to look good. They either have to look good because Hollywood's paying them to do it, or they want to look good because they're wealthy and when they get up in front of their meetings or whatever they do, or just want to look good when they're walking the streets of NYC. Like it's not going to happen in 8 months, right? Like let's take a picture of you and like look at it 2 years from now, and you're gonna you follow the plan. So it's the same, your plan is the same thing as a coach's plan, right? Like,
what's that?
You're not going to just I don't think like the Jets and the Giants don't like go to sleep the night before and say like, oh, we're going to come up with our plan tomorrow morning and let's see what happens.
The Jets and the Giants are a really bad example.
Yeah, bad example. All
right, well,
you're wrong. They are doing that.
I'm a Detroit guy, so all of our sports teams, Pistons are doing well right now, but like all of them, like it's bad examples. So I just threw out geographical location, but right, like it's the same thing with you and the general population, like weight loss or physique or whatever it may be. Like you're not going to just like, okay, you met with me, I'm going to turn around, write it on this like piece of paper, and we're going to run with it. Like it's going to take some time. We're going to have some successes. We're going to have some failures. We're going to have some stuff that like we're going to have to repeat multiple cycles to see if it works because it was kind of like in between. And then like slowly but surely you'll see those results happen.
Yeah, and both of you guys can comment on this, but we talked about this with Ben, Don, the last day. But good best practices surrounded by placebos is not a bad thing. Like, if you vet the placebo or what it is, but what do you think about that?
Power of mind is one thing, right? Like, there's the swimming community will know exactly who this is, but there's a swimmer that's allegedly consumes Diet Coke and soda products when they compete at the championships, right? And like we know, like that's probably not really good, but odds are that that individual doesn't. That's not the majority of their dietary impact on a day-to-day basis. Like you don't get to the elite level like that. Like there's only so much the human freak can overcome, right? Like eventually it catches up to you. So and again, like it's game day or it's the Olympics. Like who gives a shit, right? Like if that's what makes them go. We'll the other 365 days times 8, like we'll clean up.
Yeah, Usain Bolt and chicken nuggets, right? Like that was not the Beijing thing. You had chicken nuggets.
Yeah, it's right. Yeah, right.
I can't explain why. We're just all wired differently, and one of I always think of this story when I was playing college baseball. There was a kid on my team, great hitter, fast, great glove, had all the tools. I was a workhorse. He just wasn't a workhorse. And I remember looking at him one day, and I said, "Damn, Rich," I said, "if you put like half the time I put into this, like you probably get drafted." And he looked at me and he goes, "Don, if I worked half as hard as you worked, I'd play worse." He goes, "because the game wouldn't be fun for me anymore. And I got to go in and I got to stay light on my toes." And yeah, he would go into practices, he's laughing and moving around and doing all the drills. He wasn't dogging him, but he wasn't taking extra BP. He wasn't going and hitting the weight room. And it bothered me when he said that. I was like, okay, but after years, I just thought about it. If it is what it is, like if you take a superstar world-class athlete and you suddenly start Tim Burke, world Remax World Drive Champ, came to me years ago as a friend of mine, and he was swinging a golf club 154 miles an hour with 227 mile an hour ball speed. Dustin Johnson gets it up around maybe 185, 190. So think about what I just said, 227 mile an hour ball speed. And Charlie Weingroff and I met this guy, 6'5", pitcher for University of Miami, farm boy strong. And I was like, Jesus, Charlie, this guy doesn't even work out. Like, could you let's get him, like, let's put him on a crazy, let's get this guy training. Charlie was like, whoa. We may not want to do that. And then we had to sit down. Now Charlie had to hold my hand and sit me down for the next hour, explain to me what he was getting at. But yeah, Charlie was right. Like if we turned around and started training this guy, we don't know what's going to happen. Is that going to work against him? Does that make sense? I mean, I don't know if you agree.
No, yeah, it happens all the time in sports. Derek, I'm sure you've seen it, experienced it. Another one of our Joe Ken House, the Carolina Panthers strength coach. Like I've heard him on a million podcasts tell a story of Steve Smith, right? A guy that's going to be inducted into Canton in 3 more years. I talked about when they were at Utah, they had to hide his practice equipment, his helmet and shoulder pads in the weight room coach's office so that he would actually come in and do something in the weight room, right? But get him out on the field, forget about it. He's a Hall of Famer. Michael was very similar to that. There's certain days that he would love to bring the heat in the weight room, but at the end of the day, he knew how to push himself on exercises that he felt confident about, and ones that he was I could probably push it today, but I'm going to push myself in a swim workout later or tomorrow, and I'm going to get greater value of that. And who cares, right?
Bo Jackson used to talk about that. Did you see Bo's, not to interrupt, but it just went off a light bulb in my head. Did you ever watch his 30 for 30?
No.
Okay, so Bo Jackson's 30 for 30 was one of the most incredible things that I've ever seen. They were talking about him in high school doing a standing backflip out of the water in a pool. So they're at 12 years old, he was able to dunk a stick. He picked up a little stick and he dunked it. All these crazy stories. And Bo used to say, he's well, I didn't understand. He goes, these coaches would bring me in the weight room and they'd want to tire me out. I'm like, why do you want to do all that strenuous activity? We got to go on the field and we got to do our work on the field. And then they brought him into the weight room and he's I think the first time he ever got on the bench, he benched 500 pounds. He's just you know what I'm saying? And obviously, probably I would say in my eyes, obviously not the most successful athlete, but when you look at pure athleticism, power, speed, strength, I don't know how many other people you're going to put up with that. It's,
yeah, I mean, right? just, you got tackled, Dad. Otherwise, like, we would be having like that potential discussion of like he was the greatest of all time. Poor, like, it's, you know, it stinks. And but
yeah, well, it's really interesting looking at these outliers. Like, I don't know if you guys seen these ads lately for the LeBron's trainer, and it's called the Ladder or something, and they're all trying to say like, oh, we made LeBron into this great athlete, and you got to take our supplement and follow our program. And it's like, well, natural selection was a really good system of producing him, right? So, I mean, as the consumer, the general consumer, and Don, you touch on this with your clients, like, you know, let's look at the big picture, not like what supplement did he take. So.
Yeah, or that LeBron loves the VersaClimber and he bought it for every guy on the Heat. So suddenly, I love the VersaClimber, but it's hysterical. I have every celebrity come to me right now going, I should order a VersaClimber. And I'm like, all right, like, you want to spend I love him. $4,200 is still a lot of money for a piece of cardio equipment. Like, it's like this, you can get, you know, the Airdyne bikes are really hard and $600. It's like, you know, it's just funny. It's just funny how something gets glorified and then we're having that battle.
Not the edginess of them, right? Like the three parallels I see between like MJ, Kobe, and Michael was like, they talk about like their edginess, right? Like MJ wasn't necessarily like the greatest team player. Like he had an edge or a, I don't know,
he was nasty in practice. I heard he would like be belittling guys and going after them in practice.
Right, and the Kobe, like, you're soft as Charmin, like, that got picked up on like camera or like it was heard, and like it's a lot what like that is what like one of the biggest things that Michael had. Right? Like, it got glorified by the face when that knucklehead was like shadow boxing him, and he was like, all right, let's bring the heat, and then, you know, like his ability to be like to say like this set, like, so this repeat is hard, but it's not that. I can do two more. And it just breaks the will of everybody else, right? Like, just that you can't sell that. And I think that's why it's never like really talked about. And I don't want to talk about culture because I think that's, again, an overused, undefined word. Brett Bartholomew has done a good job of defining it. But like that, like, yeah, MJ, like, I just heard the story about how like he would purposely order like pizzas that were on the team plane because the owner was a little heavier set. And it was like MJ saying like just, he's even attacking him. Like, no one in this organization is as good and is fit as I am and like as committed as I am. And I'm not afraid to take shots at anybody. Because what are you going to do? Either get on board with me or get rid of me. The Bulls would never do that, right? Like, and I always encourage, like, you want to get the highest level, like, work so hard, have the mindset such that, like, you know, you've trained, and so you can beat people. You know, in revenue sports, you've watched enough film, you practice, like, you've mentally, basically the Patriots, right? Like, they don't have the most talented team, but like, why is Tom Brady like had such a long longevity? Is he doesn't get sacked, right? He just like falls down instead of getting sacked. I mean, they talk about it all the time, right? Like, whereas Aaron Rodgers, like, he stays in there until he gets banged up, right? Like, it just you can't market some of those like intangibles, right?
I mean, that culture is pretty incredible. We were talking about them the other day and how, I don't know how many times the Patriots would get rid of a player. And I'm saying to myself, why the hell are they getting rid of him? Like, why are they allowing him to leave? Whatever they'll have, or Wes Welker, what are you kidding me? And then like Julian Edelman comes aboard. You know, you just see them do things, which is one of the reasons why, you know, they're obviously so great. But I got one question for you, and I'm gonna close on this, more of a selfish question because you just brought it up. We got MJ, we got Kobe, or we got LeBron. Who's the greatest?
Oh, at hoops? I would say MJ because that's I grew up watching NBA at that time. Like I said, I'm a Detroit guy, so I was a Bad Boys fan. So like, I'm gonna take Bill Laimbeer any day. But
I love it.
You know, like, and then I kind of like just stopped watching basketball during Kobe's prime, and now I've kind of looped it back in because even though there's these powerhouse teams, I do like a lot of it's because of like our field is like. We're seeing more and more of like our field like impacting NBA now, like people talking about Chris Paul's hamstring injury, like stuff like that. Like, so it just interests me. Like, so I watch it more from a nerd standpoint than a professional standpoint. So Although I would say definitely like right now MJ, and then LeBron's closing in. Like I always like Kobe's fantastic, and I like the way like we talked about his edginess. But you play with Shaq, like he played with some good guys, right? Like and LeBron, right? Like the Cavaliers, right? You take them off any team. You take them off the Lakers now, like they are so bad. Like they win when other teams sit their starters, right? Like so, you can say he's transcendental, but I would still say MJ, man. I just think whatever. Like I guess it's a generational thing, right?
I agree with you 100%. It's I probably would have answered a little easier and just said MJ. But Derek?
Yeah, I mean, I'm the same as you guys. I just knew that when he got the ball and there was 20 seconds left, they had the game. Like, I don't get the same feeling with the other guys. I just, like, if he's on your team, okay, here's the ball. Take care of it, man. So, yeah.
I love it. Well, Keenan, listen, man, it was such a pleasure. Heard great things about you, and really, really appreciate you coming on and helping us out. And if you're ever down, I don't know when you're in New York City the next time, but I'd love you to come by and kind of meet in person and come use the club, whatever you need, you let me know.
Well, likewise, I appreciate you guys coming and let me on. You guys speakerless before that. I was the Black Swan. I hope I don't saturate it and your guys' ratings plummet. But it was a pleasure to get
Actually,
on.
I'm looking at it right now, Derek. I think this was officially the longest one we've ever recorded.
Yep.
Which means we had a lot more stuff to talk about.
Yeah.
So,
awesome.
I'm kind of sure because we can't go much longer, unfortunately. But let's do it again sometime, definitely.
All right, I appreciate it.
Thanks,
all right,
guys.
Thanks,
Have
Derek.
a good weekend.
You too.
You guys too. Thank you.